what happened was the smaller companies aren't serviced by normal banks that you think of, a JP Morgan or Bank of America. There's a separate financial infrastructure for them, and those organizations are called Community Development Financial Institutions, or CDFIs. And what those are basically non-bank banks. They're organizations set up explicitly to serve minority and underserved communities. So they're funded that way, they are targeted, they're much smaller, and those banks know those communities well, but that's their whole reason they exist, is that they raise capital. Sometimes they're nonprofits, sometimes they're banks, usually not. Sometimes they raise capital from the open market, but that's their strategy. So you know that if you invest in one of those CDFIs, there's about 1,100 of them across the country. In the first round of funding, only about 90 of them participated in the PPP program. The reason for that is most of them were not a part of the SBA, the Small Business Administration program. They did not know how to apply to that program because they just hadn't been doing that. That's usually done by the larger banks. They have limited capital, so it's not like you can just lend right away. And so these are smaller banking institutions, so they needed capital. And then the application process was really complicated. You had to fill out forms they hadn't filled out before, and their customers are smaller customers who basically filled out the forms incorrectly. Over half of the forms were incorrect. So it was a complicated process. Rules were changing as we were developing the program because the Fed was giving guidance, or the Treasury rather was giving guidance, so people weren't sure where to go and what to do. And so the smaller organizations like the CDFIs were just learning about all this. And the way the program was structured, it was whoever got there first and asked for the money and wrote a loan, that's where the money went. And so you can't compete with these larger banks. They have automation. You're trying to fill out a form manually online. They have AI applications called bots that are automatically filling out the forms online. So it just wasn't even a fair fight. So all the money went to the larger banks. And if you were a tiny company or a barbershop or something, you didn't have a relationship with one of those large banks, it's unlikely you would have gotten a loan because, like most businesses, they service their best customers first, whoever got there, and that's how the money got distributed. The other issue was about, especially in the Black community, almost 90% of the businesses are sole proprietorships. So you don't have a W-2, they're 1099 employees. So the example I give people, if you're a barbershop owner, and you're just renting out your chairs and someone else a barber can rent those 4 chairs, you don't have W-2 employees, they're just agents of yours, people, your partners of yours. And so if you have to produce that documentation, and if you do a whole program based on your payroll, you're not gonna be able to show that because it doesn't exist. So those are some of the issues. Another issue is by basing it on payroll, the way they did it, that the amount of money you could borrow was up to 75% based on your payroll, and it had to be used for that, and 25% for the issues. But depending on what type of business you've had, your payroll may not be your biggest cost. You may have inventory, insurance, rent, other things. And so the lack of flexibility on that was a problem for some people. They just couldn't use it as currently structured. That's been addressed in the next bill that's coming up.